The Haftorah of Acharei-Kedoshim is from the book of Amos, and the Navi Amos prophesied together with other prophets in his generation, like Isaiah, Yeshaya, Micha, Hosea, over 2,600 years ago. Amos was famous for saying the following: there are 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. It's very difficult to remember all the 613. Can you encapsulate it in just one line, in one word, one idea? And the Gemara in Makis, page 24a, says that Amos took the entire Torah and he said, it comes down to this: Dirshuni v'chyu, which means seek me out and live. Amos said that the entire Torah is one line: Dirshuni v'chyu, seek me out and live. This idea of seek me out and live is really the connection between Acharei and Kedoshim and the Haftorah. Acharei talks about after the death of the two sons of Aaron. Why did the two sons of Aaron die? Because they were seeking out God. Dirshuni, they were looking for God. They had a thirst for God. They had a yearning for God. And our rabbis tell us that that yearning is a very positive yearning. Every Jew, every person, every human should have this desire for spirituality, this desire for God, and this thirst for holiness. However, unfortunately, they went a bit too far. They overdosed on spirituality. They had, as Chassidus says, a rotzoi without a shuv. They had a running without a returning, a desire without a return. Because after you get closer to God and get holier and more spiritual, now you need to take those new tools and energy and effectuate the world and pervade the world in a positive way. So, Amos teaches us, number one is seek me out, and therefore you will live. In contrast to the end of Acharei and Kedoshim, which speak about the prohibitive relations. By doing so, you are violating the Torah, and therefore you are severing your connection with God. And therefore, it is the opposite of life. If you want to live, then you have to seek me out and follow the Torah. The Torah that God gave us is, number one, to refine us. Number two is to connect us to a higher reality. And if we violate the mitzvahs, what happens is, in reality, we are severing our relationship with God. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that every person is connected to God with a rope, or the lower soul is connected to the higher soul with a rope. And in this rope there are 613 commandments. And when you do the commandment, you are opening up a new channel for blessing. When you violate the commandment, you are severing that rope, and therefore severing your relationship with God. So what does he tell us? To focus in on one pasuk in this Haftorah, a very famous pasuk. He says here, B'yom hahu akim es sukas David hanefeles. In verse number 11, he says, on that day, I will raise up the sukkah, the tent of David that has fallen. What is this fallen tent of David? Who is this fallen tent of David? There are two opinions. One is it represents David HaMelech himself, and the other is that it represents Mashiach. The first approach is that Sukkos David literally means David that has fallen. As the Zohar tells us that David HaMelech was supposed to be a bar nefle, a fallen one, a miscarriage. And he was going to die at birth. Adam HaRishon, Adam the first man, who was a neshama kolalis, a general soul of all the souls of all the generations, God brought him into paradise and said, look, I want to show you all of these people that will come from you. And Adam saw this great soul, this great light. And he said, wow, who is this? He says, this is King David. But how come he has no life? He's born and he dies. God tells Adam, if you want, you can give him life. And so Adam, who was supposed to live 1,000 years, gives 70 years of his life to David HaMelech. And so David HaMelech is born and he lives for 70 years. Why 70 years? And what is the meaning that Adam was the one that gave this life to David HaMelech? King David represents the attribute, the sphera of Malchus, kingship. Kingship can be very arrogant. From the 10 sphirot, we start with Chachma, intellect, understanding, and knowledge. The final one is kingship. Kingship generally represents power and arrogance. If a person is arrogant and the person is a yesh, then they have no life, because God only rests upon one that is humble. God says, I and the arrogant one cannot live together in this world. This universe is not big enough for the both of us. So David HaMelech, by nature being a king of Malchus, had no life because he did not have the receptacle to receive God's life, because of the fact that he was kingship, which is arrogance. However, Adam, which represents Chachma, represents the ultimate intellect. As it says, Adam was so brilliant, he was even more brilliant than the supernal angels. So Adam represents the level of Chachma. Chachma, intellect, is the power of what? Is humility. Koach ma, Chachma is koach ma, the power of what am I? Humility. So through humility, one is able to receive life. One becomes a receptacle for God's blessing. As it says in the book of Ecclesiastes, that ha-chachma, techaya, that is through chachma, that it will give life to those who seek it. That wisdom preserves and gives life to those that possess it. So Adam had life. And Adam now gives 70 years of his life to David HaMelech. Why 70? Because he gave the 7 sphirot of Chachma times 10. We know that each level, each midah, each emotion has in it 10 additional sub-sphirot. And so he gave David HaMelech the 7 emotions from Chesed down to Malchut, times 10, which means a full dose of each of these attributes. And now David HaMelech was able to live for 70 years. And therefore, when Mashiach will come, the Sukkah's David Hanifeles, this Sukkah of David will be raised up. Now Adam being that he was a neshama klalis, he was a general soul for all generations. In the word Adam, we see the entire history. For Adam is Aleph, Daled, Mem. Aleph is Adam himself, the first human being, created by God himself. Daled represents David HaMelech. And then the Mem is Mashiach. You have the beginning, the middle, and the end. Now, when Mashiach will come, it's going to be turned around. Adam will then become Me'od, very. Mem, Aleph, Daled, the same 3 letters as Adam, will become reversed. The permutation will change, and the first letter will be the Mem, which is Mashiach, because Mashiach will be the central figure. Now in the Shema we say, love God b'chol levavcha, with your entire heart, u'v'chol nafshecha, your entire soul, u'v'chol ma'oidecha, with your entire might and with all your money. So ma'oid, very, represents to love God very, very much. Historically, the Jewish people served God with their entire heart during the first temple and the second temple. Your entire heart means your animal soul and your godly soul. Not only should you serve God with your godly soul, but also your animal soul, which means when you eat, when you drink, when you sleep, you also serve God. But yet, they were two separate souls. It was still the godly soul, and there was the animal soul. Then came the terrible massacres, an exile of the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, primarily the Spanish Inquisition, and then, of course, the terrible Holocaust and communism, where many, many Jews sacrificed their lives. 6 million plus for Almighty God. That is serving God, b'chol nafshecha, with your entire soul, willing to die for God. Now we're finally at step 3, b'chol mo'idecha, to serve God with all your might. And that means that not only the godly soul is serving God, but also the animal soul serves God, and they become fused as one. And this is hinted in the fact that when Mashiach will come, and God will elevate the Sukkah of David, he's going to breach all the gaps. Because at that time when Amos was talking about and prophesying, there was a split amongst the Jewish people. There were the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes. There was the camp of Judah and there was the camp of Ephraim. And so Mashiach will bring both of these camps together. He will unify both of these camps. But we need to start by unifying within ourselves the godly soul and the animal soul to serve God b'chol ma'odecha, with all your might. And therefore, the way we do this is through acquiring more knowledge of Torah, which is chachma, and surrendering our ego to Almighty God. And this means literally to study more Torah, to do more mitzvahs, and primarily to give charity. Charity, the Alter Rebbe says, is the biggest mitzvah today. Even though in the early generations, the greatest mitzvah was the study of Torah, nowadays the greatest mitzvah is tzedakah. And by giving tzedakah, you elevate the entire person, you elevate the entire world. And we prepare the world l'kabel panei Mashiach tzedkeinu. Another approach, Sukkah David HaNefeles represents Mashiach. Where do we see this? So the Gemara tells the story. The Gemara says that there were 2 rabbis, and one rabbi said to the other, Amalei Rab Nachman Rab Yitzchak. Rab Nachman said to Rab Yitzchak, do you know when the fallen one is coming? Do you know when the bar nefli is coming? Do you know when the miscarriage is coming? He says, who are you talking about? Man bar nefli. Who is this person that you're talking about that you are quantifying him as a bar nefli, a miscarriage? And he responds, Amalei, Mashiach. I'm talking about Mashiach. kri-ksiv, because it says in the book of Amos, Vayomahu, on that day, Okim es Sukkah David HaNefeles, I will raise up the sukkah, the tent of David that has fallen. From here we see that Mashiach is the Sukkah David, he is the tent of David. How does this connect with the idea of Chachma and Malchus, of kingship and intellect? Mashiach comes from David HaMelech. If David would not have been born, Mashiach would not be born. But Mashiach is coming to complete that which David started. And really it was started already by Adam. And that is, Almighty God created a world. And how did God create the world? Ba'asarim amoris nivra olam. We say in Ethics of Our Fathers, God created the world with 10 utterances of speech through Dibur. And these utterances of speech continue to create the world ex nihilo every moment anew. But yet, when you look around, what do you see? You see a table, you see a chair, you see an iPhone, everything physical. Where's the God in these words? The problem is that the Malchus, which is the attribute of kingship, which is also the attribute of speech, is arrogant. And therefore, it covers over, it conceals the orator, it conceals the creator, it conceals Almighty God. So what do we need to do? We need to have bittul. We need to have the quality of chachma, of intellect, which is the quality of koach ma, the power of what am I. once we are able to acquire this attribute, this midah, then we are able to reveal the speech, the kingship of God in the world. And that is primarily our mission today, and that is primarily the function of Mashiach, to bring about the revelation of Hashem Yimloich L'Olam Voed, that God is king and God will be king forever and ever. So it starts with bittul. It starts with revealing in this world that every detail is truly created by God, but yet it is concealed. And by the fact that we reveal this speech of God, through the fact that we start every day with surrendering ourselves to God, by learning Torah, by giving charity, and by praying, and making the world a better place. And of course, to love God, and to seek out God, and to love your fellow as yourself. This is the way we fix the world. This is the way we prepare the world. And this is the way we're going to lift up, once again, this sukkah of David that has fallen. A story is told that the great tzaddik and holy chassid, Rabbi Zusha of Anipola, who would travel from town to town, and he would live a life of concealment. And he had a self-imposed exile to purify himself and to become more spiritual. And so he would go from town to town, and he would live in the Beis Medrash. He would live in the actual synagogue and study Torah there, and hopefully somebody would invite him for a meal, and that's the way he would eat a little bit. And day and night he would study Torah and pray and get closer and closer to God. One Friday night, all the congregants of the shul were leaving, and finally, as the last person was leaving the shul, the shamish, he sees a yid, a person, a beggar, sitting in the corner. He walks over to him and says, "Sir, would you like to come to us for dinner Friday night at Shabbos?" And so Rabbi Zusha said, "Yes, sure, thank you for inviting me." He came to the house of the person, of the shamish, and as he's sitting at the table, he's eating and he's singing and he's teaching Torah. The children of the home see something very unusual. They see how Rabbi Zusha of Anipola is kissing his hands, his fingers, something which is totally unusual, they were not used to. And so one of the children walked over to Rabbi Zusha and said, "Rabbi Zusha, tell me, what is the reason that you're kissing your hands the whole time?" Rabbi Zusha said, "Aha, I thought you would never ask. I'll tell you why I'm kissing my hands." Rabbi Zusha said, "Look, on the holiday of Sukkot, we have a mitzvah to take an esrog and the lulav and make a bracha on it. And many people, what do they do with the esrog? They kiss the esrog. They're so happy to have the esrog. All year long, they're praying for the esrog. All year long, they're saving up money for the esrog. Finally comes the holiday of Sukkot, and they have the esrog. They take it and they kiss it because it's a mitzvah. The esrog now became holy. All year round, the esrog is not holy. All year round, the esrog is a citron. It's a piece of fruit. You don't kiss a piece of fruit. You don't kiss food. But on the holiday of Sukkot, the esrog becomes a mitzvah. And because it's a mitzvah, it's now holy. And because it's holy, it's like kissing a Sefer Torah. You kiss also the esrog." He said, "Till now, I was a simple Jew in the synagogue. But now you called me to your house, and you did a mitzvah with me. You invited me to your home. You fulfilled the mitzvah of inviting guests. Now I'm the guest. I'm the mitzvah. If I'm the mitzvah, I should kiss my hands. I'm holy." And this is the message of Acharei-Kedoshim. It's important to have a desire for God. It's important to become holy. But what does it mean to be holy? What it means to be holy means to be more human. It means to be more sensitive. It means to care about other people. And that's why in the portion of Kedoshim we talk about practical laws, to respect the elders, to love your fellow as yourself. This is the meaning of holiness. But to reach this level, to understand what it means, the holiness of another person, of a godly soul, of another human being, you first need to seek out God. You first need to become more spiritual. You first need to become more holy. And then you realize and appreciate and become more sensitive. So we hope and pray that in the merit of loving our fellow as ourselves, as we know that the temple was destroyed because of sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred, and through unconditional love we will see the coming of Mashiach, and once again God will raise up Sukkahs David HaNefeles, the Sukkah of David that has fallen.